So here we go. This is another attempt at doing what I guess people would consider to be ASMR, although I'm not entirely sure if this could be considered ASMR. Um, Here's to hoping that I don't have to redo all of this. And to be honest, I kind of just want to let go with the flow, if you know what I'm saying. Um, this is going to be another situation where I'm just fucking going to ramble because I didn't want to wake up and immediately start writing some sort of script for this. Although maybe a script would have helped, but I'm not really that good at writing scripts that are meant to go on for long periods of time. The last time I've had to do something similar was uh, for my speech class. I got to do an outline, but even that's not necessarily a script, you know? An outline just guides you, but a script is just straight up like, yo, copy this and make it correct. Oh, god damn, man. Fucking coughing. Okay. Apologize. I have a bit of a dry throat right now. As a matter of fact, let me actually get some water. Make sure that everybody drinks water every once in a while. It's really healthy and it helps you out big time. I did everything I could in my power to not just outright burp into the mic, and I know that this sounds fucking disgusting, but I don't know. I'm the kind of person that thinks that things like that would be funny if it's just all of a sudden. Although humor is just subjective anyway, so people can find whatever they want to be funny. Yeah, who cares at the end of the day, right? Um, what is there to talk about? I don't know. Last time I kind of went into a little bit about my some of my favorite games, but I never really spoke in depth about them. You know, like I mentioned Terraria and Isaac, but I didn't necessarily speak about them in the sense of like what happens or what's the story and why I like it so much. Although I guess if I wanted to do something like that, if I really truly wanted to talk about a game for its story, the first game that I would go to is Lisa, the Painful and Joyful. Um, because to me, those games came out and I discovered them uh, at a very, I'd say, important moment in my life when things were happening and it just felt like everything around me was just muddled and strange. But I'll do that at a later date. That one I can actually excuse me. That one I can actually realistically talk about for a long time and just go off the rails with it because I'm here to sort of, I guess, enjoy it. But it is one of my favorite video games in the sense of like the lore. Um, it is a turn-based RPG, and I'm not the biggest fan of those. Um, I can enjoy them every once in a while, but usually it's not really my thing. I'm not. I'm like sort of impatient, not necessarily, but you know what I mean. But yeah, maybe later on I'll uh make another video and I will talk about Lisa in its entirety. But for now, I'll just simply say that Lisa the Painful and Joyful together make up one of my favorite lore-based games, entirely for the lore. But let me actually let me talk about the lore for another game though. Let me talk about Binding of Isaac for a while because the lore for Binding of Isaac is actually very interesting, and it does raise up some questions about why Edmund McMillan made it and what he's trying to say with it. But the uh, it starts off with a boy. His name is Isaac, and he's living with his mother on a small house on a hill. Isaac kept to himself, playing with his toys and drawing while his mother watched Christian broadcasts on the television. Life was simple, and they were both happy. Until one day, his mother heard a voice from above. So it goes on to be like making it so that this voice was God, quotation on quotation, God, and how she was telling, and how God was telling the mother that. God, man, I'm fucking. It's just annoying. And how God was telling Isaac's mother that Isaac was full of sin and that she had to remove all possible like sin, like things that might cause sin for him in his life or make him sinful in some way. And so the first thing she does is she takes away all of his toys, rips away all of his drawings, and then like takes his clothes off and fucking just has him sit there naked with no toys. Um, and then God is like, all right, good job, that's the first step, but he's still like sinful. You have to keep him away from all things that potentially could give him more sin. And so in response to that, she locks him in his room. It's like, it's kind of obvious as to what Edmund McMillan thinks of with religion when he makes a game like this. And then this is how the story starts off, and this is how the story always began. Like in the original Flash Isaac, it started like this, and in the new Rebirth Isaac, it starts like this as well. But what's it called? She locks him in his room, and he's stuck in there. He's sad. And so she's thinking, okay, I have removed him of all sin. That means that he should be saved now, right? And so she hears the voice of God one more time. And God says, you've done as I asked, and for that I am grateful. But I need one more show of devotion from you. I need a sacrifice. Your son will be the sacrifice. And the first thing that she does, she goes into her kitchen, grabs a fucking butcher's knife, and starts going towards Isaac's room. Isaac, in a crack in his door, which is like comically drawn to be massive as shit for no reason. Isaac, in the crack of his door, actually straight up just sees that his mom is doing this. And the first thing he does is he starts losing his mind, and he tries to find a way to get out of his room. And he can see his mom coming in until he notices a trap door under his rug. And so he looks at it, and it's a trap door that leads down to the basement. So as he's opening the door to the basement, his mother opens the door. She sees him, and she's going towards him, and he jumps down without any further thought. And then from there, the game begins. So the game is a roguelike, which means that every single time you play it, it's going to be a different experience. And usually it amounts to the idea that because it's going to be different every time, you won't really experience the same thing every single time, or at least most of the time you'll experience something new. So every run will be different, and you can have a unique experience every time. I repeated the same thing like fucking 6 times, so just deal with it. The word time is funny time to time. But you repeat it multiple times, and you go through the level. You control Isaac, you move with WASD, and you shoot with the arrow buttons. Or if if you have a controller, then you move with the left stick and you shoot with the right stick. And there are items that you can find that'll like change how Isaac shoots, or like affect what he moves, or like how healthy he is, or whatever. And all the enemies usually are either nasty or grotesque. Now this is to say that like it's not that like all the enemies are purposefully like grotesque or disgusting. It's just that a lot of them are. And this is, I'd imagine, mostly due to the fact that Isaac is a child, and because he's a child, he kind of like inherently comes into contact with nasty things. And it's like the idea that is like like nasty things like poop and pee and vomit and all that stuff. But it also does like the grotesque version of it is like things like um dying children, or like dying babies, or floating meat heads, or just like skulls that are on the ground that like lift up to show like a column of meat, and then it shoots bullets at you from that column of meat. It's so weird when you actually look into it. But some of them are references to some of Edmund's other games, and Edmund does go out, like Edmund, without a doubt, is the kind of person that just looks at like grotesque shit, and he's like, haha, I'm gonna make this a game. I'm gonna make everything nasty because I have a fetish for shit. And when I mean shit, I don't mean like generalization shit. I mean like shit. But the game is the idea behind all the enemies looking like that and all the items and stuff is uh Isaac. Like the story of Isaac is actually very strange because even though it tells us that Isaac jumps down into this like into the basement, so it depends on how you interact with the story that it actually tells us that he didn't jump into the basement as much as he actually just hid in the room, but in a spot that his mother wouldn't find. And so, as you go through the levels, you sort of go deeper and deeper until you end up reaching the catacombs. But from the catacombs onwards, you sort of enter non-reality. And I say non-reality because it's like the level progression doesn't make sense anymore, right? You can after the cathedral, you kill your mother, quote unquote, kill your mother as a boss fight, and then you enter her womb, which is sounds fucking awful. You know, it sounds disgusting, but it it helps. Or not. And what the fuck did I just say? It's like it's the progression of how the game goes. I don't understand why. I think it has something to do with like Isaac sort of regretting his own birth. But like you went to the your mother's womb and then you kill her heart. After you kill her heart, you are given the choice of either going to Sheol or Sheol or to the cathedral. And it's so weird. Sheol is hell. Like it's you're basically going to hell, and the cathedral is heaven. So you kill your mother, and then you have the choice of going to heaven or hell. But once you go to cathedral, the final boss of cathedral, or the boss of cathedral is Isaac himself. And then when you defeat Isaac, you can go into another location called the chest. The chest is where Isaac hid. It's where canonically Isaac went to instead of the basement. He had a big chest in his room, so he went inside of it and locked himself in it. And his mother couldn't find him. So Isaac's mother actually, after a while, came back to her senses and was worried about where Isaac was. She started putting up posters of Isaac missing. But she did end up finding Isaac, and she ended up finding Isaac in the chest. But after a long time. By the time she found him, he was long dead. He was oxygen deprived, and he like his entire body had turned blue. And if like even like further into the story, he actually becomes a skeleton. Like that's how like long that he was. That he ended up rotting away and becoming a skeleton. So like Isaac has a lot of boss fights, a lot of like story important boss fights, um, and there are a few that are very there are a few that are more impactful of others that are more important when it comes to finding out who Isaac was as a character instead of just like oh, this is a boss fight, like this is what you have to do. um I think the like all the final boss fights bring up some sort of um like thinking, or like the like brings it deeper into the story, or talks about the reality of what happened. And let me see if I can remember all the like all the quote unquote big final boss fights. So there is the first one that comes to my mind is Blue Baby, or triple question mark. Blue Baby is Isaac stuck in the chest, having been oxygen deprived. you have to fight him, and his boss fight is very similar to Isaac's as well, but it's slightly different, and he surrounds himself in flies because he's dead. And so, you it's you're basically fighting Isaac post like suffocation. No breathing. Don't give a fuck if I cut my arm, please. um, you do that. The opposite end of the spectrum, Blues Baby is actually the final boss of the heaven route, sort of. The final boss of the hell route is the lamb. Now, if you know anything about the Bible, the lamb is another name for Jesus Christ. And so you would think, okay, so why are you fighting Jesus in the hell and like the hell side of everything? Well, Isaac never really had a good idea of what religion is. And so he kind of like saw how it was affecting his mother, and he inherently thought it was negative. So to him, the lamb is actually a pure embodiment of evil, because the Bible talks about it as if it's like pure good, but Isaac doesn't believe the Bible. So to him, the lamb is demonic and evil. And it's interesting because it's actually the way that it is looks, it's like a skeleton with like big goat horns coming out of the sides, like that are curled. And it's actually a really cool boss fight. It's not hard, but it's fun. Um, there's Mega Satan. Mega Satan might just be Isaac attempting to fight like his evils, or trying to like cope with his dark side in a sense, because there is a part of Isaac that believes that he is also evil inherently, like he is a demon, which is, kind of like interesting that he's a child and he believes that he's evil. But I think there are some children that actually do have to go through that. They believe that they are wrong, or that they like ruin their parents' lives. Um, Hush. Hush is interesting. It's a giant mass of blue flesh that is attached to the ground, and it's a fucking massive boss fight. It's like one of the first bullet hell fights of the game, like that I felt really told you the direction that Edmund was gonna go with the boss fights for this shit. But Hush is interesting because it's it more or less looks like an aborted fetus. And I think Hush, I could be wrong with this. I'll look into it later. I think Hush is what Isaac was afraid, like, of what should, like, was supposed to happen to him, that he thinks that he should have been aborted, and that his parents should have just never had him. And so fighting Hush is kind of like Isaac rationalizing that he should have never been born. The last two, I will act. The first one was added before the second one, but I will talk about the second one first, because the last one is supposed to be the canonical final boss, the one that it's like no matter what happens, this is what happened, and this is what Isaac went through. But the second one is a combination, sort of. First, you fight Dogma, and if you look up Dogma, it's more Dogma. Actually, the definition of Dogma is the um it means like a overarching sense of like principles that one must follow. Usually, they tend to be negatively perceived by the individual. Dogma, to Isaac, is Christianity and all of its principles. He sees it, and it's like this static child attached to a TV via fetus-like line that he doesn't actually that he has to fight. And this boss fight is fucking amazing. It's actually, personally, it's my favorite boss fight of the game. But it's like they put a lot of effort into making it really fun. The music is fan fucking tastic, and the fight itself is fun, like good. Um, but Dogma is Isaac coming to terms that he believes that religion really has dictated what his life should be, and he doesn't like that. But after you defeat Dogma, Isaac is sort of sent to like super hell. And after Isaac is sent to super hell, Also note, it's about to hit the 20-minute mark. Looking at it right now, I will keep going. I'm actually going to. I want to keep going with this. I want to finish what I'm talking about here before I end the video. So this will probably go on until like 25 minutes. So you're welcome. Um, he kind of sort of goes to super hell, and to super hell he fights the four horsemen of the apocalypse, followed by the beast. And the beast is actually in the Bible. Like, this is a part in the book of Revelations that it speaks about the apocalypse of the four horsemen. There's famine, pestilence, war, and death. And then after you defeat these four horsemen, you have to fight the beast. This fight, um, you fight each of the horsemen one after another, and then you fight the beast finally. But this fight, in its entirety, is the most like the most immersed, like what's the word? I'm trying to come up with the word. It's like it's the biggest piece, or the biggest, like, there you go. This game is the biggest set piece that you'll have in it, or this fight in the entire game, because the way that it functions is that it kind of works like a side-scrolling shooter, where Isaac can't really, like, he's flying and he has to like dodge around the screen while the boss is firing at him, and it's fucking ridiculous. It's obvious that they put all, like, the most amount of effort into this fight, and that's okay, you know? Like, if you put a lot of effort into the rest of the things and then the most effort into the final boss, then you definitely wanted the boss to be memorable. And this boss is 100% memorable. Getting to it is just as hard as, like, actually fighting it. But you defeat the four horsemen, you defeat the beast, and you get an ending that shows Isaac ascending, like having, like, Isaac was fighting the beast and God came down, destroyed the beast, and chose Isaac and ascended him and sort of made him see all of his lives. But he decided, like, God decided to fix them. So all of the fears, all of the turmoil that Isaac went through were reverted. Isaac got back his pet cat. His parents remarried and were happy. And Isaac's mother was taking care of her baby boy just as he should be, and she can see his, like, or Isaac can see his mother, like, kissing him goodnight and, like, putting him to bed. And it's so sweet because it actually keeps going with the narrator talking. And the narrator is also an important character, funny enough, because it turns out that the narrator ends up being Isaac's father. Because the narrator talks and he's mentioning this, and he's like, you know what? It doesn't have to end this way, Isaac. This is your story. You can choose how you want it to be. And Isaac talks for the first time. Well, not for the first time, but Isaac talks to his father here, and it's so fucking adorable. Like, you literally have to listen to this to know what I'm talking about. It's so cute, but it's also so sad, because when I tell you about the final boss, you'll realize, like, why it's so sad. But Isaac talks to his father, and then his dad says, you know what? Let's change it. Let's make it a better ending. And so he restarts the story. He asks Isaac if he's tired, and he's like, okay, let's fix the story, and then I'll put you to bed. And so he restarts the story, and then it's the beginning of the game, where it's like Isaac and his mother lived alone in a small house. But it's so sweet. And then the credits plays, and it's like this fucking slow demonic Christian song. So it's like it was sweet, but then you get this hint that it really isn't. Like, some shit happened, and it sucks. But let me tell you about the true final boss of The Binding of Isaac, which is also coincidentally one of the most hated bosses in Isaac, and it's for good reason. Occasionally, Isaac can go to the final level of the entire game, called the Void. And the Void is like a mishmash of a bunch of, like, rooms from other levels in the game. and it's a massive, massive floor with just a bunch of different like bosses, multiple bosses that you have to go through, but they're all from like earlier stages. You can even encounter final bosses from other routes of the game. But you go to the void, and the true final boss, which is this big amorphous white blob with a mouth and yellow eyes called Delirium. Delirium is capable of transforming into versions of other bosses that you have encountered during your run. Yes, it will only copy other bosses that you have encountered. Delirium is chaos. And I say chaos in a literal sense. He will teleport across the screen, shoot multiple bullets, fly from half of the fucking room just because he feels like it. And he will instantly damage you for no reason occasionally. Like, you have no means of actually planning for Delirium most of the time. You just have to hope that your items and your build are so broken overpowered that you can beat him. So occasionally you can beat him with willpower, and I've done it before, and it feels really good. Like, I feel I have the right to say this. I have unlocked every single achievement for this fucking game. I wasted so much of I wasted almost 1,000 fucking hours on this shit. So I'll talk about it all that I goddamn want. Um, Delirium will will teleport, he'll telefrag you, he'll shoot you from across the fucking room, he'll hit you with explosive bullets, and sometimes you won't even know which bullets are explosive and which aren't. But Delirium, you kill him, and he starts glitching out. Like, Isaac will start teleporting from old rooms while there's static going on, and then he'll disappear, and then the final ending will spawn, like, will show up. And the final ending to Isaac is the idea that no matter what happens, Isaac dies. Isaac will always die. He will never be happy because delirium is the last thing that goes through his oxygen depraved mind. And it makes sense because when somebody is losing oxygen, their brain does start going delirious because it can't function properly. And so delirium is what Isaac was facing before his death. And so by killing delirium, you cement Isaac's death. But the thing is, no matter what you do, it will always be there, and it will always be the final thing that you have to take on. It's really heart-wrenching to know that no matter what you do, Isaac dies. It will always be a sad ending for Isaac, although some people actually kind of think that Isaac dying could be good sometimes. I can't entirely agree. I think that Isaac deserved a chance. And even if he might think that he might have like personal demons, it can't be blamed on him. He is a child. This was forced upon him by his fanatical mother. And so The Binding of Isaac to me is great storytelling with a lot of joking antics that could potentially ruin the storytelling. Now, that's not going to stop me from enjoying the game. I enjoyed the game. Having now realized it, I think I actually sort of stopped with the whispering halfway through, and I feel bad about that. But I'll keep, I'll hold on to the whole whispering thing as this goes on. Hopefully, it won't affect it too much in the later run. I'm actually gonna go for the 30 minutes mark. So, yeah, it's crazy. 10 whole fucking extra minutes. But this is what happens when you talk about things that you really enjoy and you know the story and everything. It's like, oh my god, it's crazy. Whoa. But it's heart-wrenching. Isaac never gets a good ending. It's never happy for him. Even with the beast. God damn it. Oh. Don't tell me I'm about to get fucking hiccups. I want to shit myself. Okay. Even with the beast ending that shows him being happy with his father and getting everything rewritten, we just find out that it's Isaac's delirious mind making up something happy for him so that he can at least try to die happy. But he still dies, and it's sort of as if it's all for nothing. But I won't go too much into it. Like it's sad, and that's more or less the story of Isaac. There's some more deep thoughts behind it. It's like what Edmund thinks about what religion and all that stuff. But I'll end it here. I hope you had a good time. I hope you have a good day, evening, night, whatever. And take care of yourself. Toodles.